Good afternoon. I'm going to start welcoming everybody here to our video today. We're going to be talking about the request for proposal. We'll give everybody a few minutes to get logged into the room. The schedule started at 4:01.
Hello. Hey, Mark, how you doing? Can you hear me?
We will be recording live on YouTube today. This is our live stream, so please maintain your privacy. I'd like to give everybody those instructions before we start, and I encourage you to maintain your mute status to help with background in case there's any distraction there. I'm going to open up our chat box. If you have questions, you can ask in chat. That always helps. And you can always tell me a little bit about your company, what kind of RFPs that you actually work with, and we will have a time available for questions and answers, Q&A. So here it is one after the hour. I like to get started generally on time here, and others will be coming in and out of the room for this session. It is actually one of my favorite sessions, and we've done it before, and we have it recorded previously. This is live streamed on YouTube, and we will have that available to you after the session, and you'll be able to download it and share it with others. But my name is Mark Knowles. I'm one of the founders of GovDirections, and here today to lead you through a discussion about the request for proposal. I always like to start off by telling you we very much enjoy serving you as a member. We're going to pass 105,000 registered members here sometime tonight, mostly, or maybe tomorrow morning. And we're very grateful that people put their trust in us, especially new contractors and contractors who've been with us for a while. We are now have been in the sector since 1998. Looking forward to 2022 as it comes around the corner here. We're located in Atlanta, Georgia, and our phone number there is 800-492-8523. GovSchool is a service of GovDirections. We learned early on that really there's a combination of being successful when working with government. The first is, defined opportunity. That's to know where that's located and how you can go about winning that information, getting that information to win those contracts. But then we learned that, most of us need a little education. It's not the easiest thing to do. There's a lot of paperwork sometimes and a little bit sometimes intimidating. So we created GovSchool. GovSchool is a learning platform to help you become more knowledgeable about topics related to government. In fact, every single day I learn something new when it comes to working with government agencies. And so we like to record that, and we'd like to share our knowledge with you. And we have a number of different featured sessions. You can go to govschool.com, see our schedule at any time. and you'll find those listed, as well as the recordings from previous sessions. And then our live YouTube channel where we do live stream, but also our YouTube videos where you can see previous sessions. And in fact, the request for proposal is one, I think we've got close to 1,000 views on that one. So it's a lot of folks like to watch it, learn a little bit more about it. Then, of course, we have GovAdvice. GovAdvice is our micro consulting platform. Someone potentially can help you, kind of on a gig basis. I like to say sometimes it's sort of the Uber driver who takes you to that first contract to help you out with particular topics that we know you need help in. For example, preparing that capability statement that we can prepare for you in a professional way using third-party services, or we have some pre-platform style look and feel documents ready for you to use on our site. From doing performance-based research to actually having some individuals work with you on writing the actual RFP. In fact, one of my favorite sessions is done by Tammy Bailey-Foltz, who's a professional writer, and she, people go to her to win contracts. And I'm going to refer to her in just a few minutes. But she is someone who does the writing RFP section, which is done every first and third Thursday. It's a little bit different in this class. This class today is really, just the introduction to an RFP, how to go about reading it. And so what we want to do today is talk about the RFP. And just some background information. First is this is live on YouTube stream, so please maintain your privacy. Also, please maintain your mute status. Unless you have a question, you can raise your hand, technically speaking, and we'll try to help you with that question. So let's get started. This course here is called the RFP, and purpose and my primary session goals is first we're going to identify the structure of a request for proposal, and then I'm going to walk you through each section and explain the importance. And we'll step in and use an actual RFP as an example to help you identify those sections. And I may even pop through on the internet to get directions to see if we can find some that fulfill that. And anytime you do have a particular area that you might want to look at, type that into our chat box, and I will refer to some of that information. And if you're on YouTube Live, we have others watching that so they can see those chats as well. But please tell us a little bit more, and we'll try to frame our comments based on your expectations during this session. The first quote I always come up with, I like to do a lot of quotes, and here we have one from Tom Hanks, and this is from A League of Their Own. And he of course, that movie was about women's softball, and it's and he first talks to them. And he says it's supposed to be hard, and if it were easy, everyone would do it. And just to reiterate, the reason why you're here today is because it's a little hard. And if it was that easy, then everybody out there would be responding to these RFPs and competing against you, and maybe it wouldn't be so fun then. And just like when you're out there playing softball, the more you practice, the better you get, and then you win that championship and go to a different level. So I always like to refer back to that quote there. I also want to take sort of the differences between how you engage with government agencies. At first, I call them contracting instruments because they kind of, once you have them out there, they kind of, and you start learning them, the music just sort of kind of comes together. So I refer to them as instruments there. But first, we have the request for information, an RFI. Request for information is something that's generally used, maybe sometimes referred to even as a sources sought. Another way the federal government likes to use that information, but generally the government says, we are looking for someone to do this type of service or provide this particular supply. Tell us about your company. So it's not a formal RFP, but more say who's interested, who's able to fulfill our request, moving toward sometimes in real complex transactions, or maybe something very unique or something you might have a special patent for, where they're actually approaching you in an agile way, using agile procurement and other types of procurement methods to approach a product delivery in a somewhat nimble way. I mean, things can change as it goes along. So governments are really open-ended. So the request for information is a first level response that you will often see before someone actually goes to a request for proposal. And oftentimes, when you're in the RFI stage, you can be situated in such a way that you can be helping write that RFP as a company who's a professional providing those services. Request for qualifications. There we're talking about an RFQ. And also sometimes you'll see that referred to as a request for quotes or an invitation to quote, and using that same acronym there. But the request for qualification itself is one where it's a little bit different than maybe the request for information, whereas they're actually, they know exactly what they want. They know a particular type of attorney, a particular type of engineer, a particular type of software language that you might be using, and they want you to submit your qualifications. And then when they move to the next stage, they're only going to have those who are qualified able to bid. Oftentimes, these requirements are driven by industry standards, and the industry likes to use that. So they want to make sure, if I'm an engineer, that I'm only competing with electrical engineers when I'm qualified and we have the certifications that I have. So make sure there's sort of a level playing field or an apple-to-apple comparison. So that's what's referred to as an RFQ. And I spoke about the source of salt. That's generally used at the federal level, and they want to go ahead and get you lined up. Oftentimes, this will be used whenever they know there's going to be a date certain. Maybe everybody who can provide apples, and then say, well, this date, we've already got all of those lined up who can actually bid, and we qualified them. And then we want an invitation to bid or quote at that point, and they've lined you up for that. So it's more of engaging with you as a community. Sometimes this is used in a meeting session or an industry day where they're pulling you together to make sure that you are qualified before they request your proposal or your quote or bid. An actual invitation to quote oftentimes is used when there's something somewhat informal. Maybe there's somebody going out, maybe pest control, for example, and maybe that's said they know they need it for 1,000 square feet in a particular part of the country, and anybody who provides pest control really knows what they're talking about. So they just pick up the phone, call you, or maybe ask you to respond by email, and everybody's going to know it's not complex, and it's there for you to be able to move quickly to respond. The invitation to bid or request for bids, that's a document that's generally is well specified. The specifications are there. They know exactly what they want, and then you're responding to them. Everybody who responds back, it's the common theme among everyone, and everyone would maybe potentially best value, low price, something, because they know exactly what you're going to provide, and it's there for you. Then, of course, we have the request for proposal, and that's why we're here today. Okay, the RFP. Here, government generally knows what they want. Maybe it's not, they have their scope that they're looking for. They understand what the deliverables are. But you're an expert in your topic, in your field, and they really depend on you, and they want your advice. And so they're going to ask you to give them a proposal on how to accomplish the objectives that they're seeking to accomplish. And sometimes this will move to a grouping of final responses. Maybe you have 3 or 4 finals, individual companies that are then competing against each other in a negotiated stage. But you at the table, helping them and fulfill their goals and their objectives. And that's really the contracting instruments that are out there. There's some others that sort of hybrids of these basic methods or instruments here, but these are the ones you generally would see at whenever government's looking to do business with you, engage in the private sector. In our country, we have a philosophy of an active process where we're using private companies to actively provide products and services and general supplies to our communities. And we want to, we try to encourage that, and we do that through that public-private partnership. But sometimes, it can be a little bit frustrating, and politics gets involved in it. I mean, we're seeing that right now with, at really sort of the federal level, where they're trying to come to a final conclusion that just did with the defense appropriations bill. That we don't really get involved so much in the decision-making process, the sort of sausage making. But once the decision is actually made, that's when we move to this next stage where you have a contracting instrument. And we think that, once that money is appropriated, that our members should be the ones who are up to play and be able to win that project or move forward with that government to provide that service, supply, or whatever commodities be needed. And so that's why we focus on training you in this arena. So what is a request for proposal? I just talked briefly about it, but it is an official solicitation. They are actively engaging you, made through a bidding process. by the agency who's company interested in procurement of a commodity, service, or valuable asset to potential suppliers and asking you to submit business proposals. One thing I always hear from clients is that when they first come to the sector, they will ask us, or state that, it looks like this is rigged. This is already, they've already decided who they're going to work with. I look at this and this document, and it just seems that it's sort of made for someone else, But the truth of the matter is, while others might have been at the table to help that government structure that document, they're actively looking for you. If there's an active call for responses, they're looking for someone to respond. They have enough tools at their disposal to go out and do business with anybody. Okay, and they can do that through sole sourcing or other justification methods. So that's important to acknowledge. So whenever they go to a competitive level of receiving bids or proposals, they want you to respond. So I always like to point that out. So at GovDirections, we only publish active listings. That means they're looking for you to submit a proposal. So you're not wasting your time. You see one there, if you come back with the best proposal, the best bid, you oftentimes will walk away as a winner, and that's important to understand. Frankly, in today's environment, they're having difficulty getting companies to even respond. I'm seeing that probably the highest level of rebids that I've ever seen. That means that nobody's even responding to it, so they're having to go back out to get somebody else to respond. And then on the more competitive, they're still not as competitive they were just 2 years ago. And so that's I think that this is the time. If you're a government contractor, this is the time that you can be successful. And it's important that you fully understand the process and move forward. So I can really encourage you. If you don't have government as a part of your business plan, it should be. It is the largest spending period in American history. And that's not only because of the additional $6 trillion that's been pumped in to the government, from the government to the private sector from the COVID-related activities, but also the infrastructure package, which is not a stimulus package like the other emergency disaster response bills that were passed. The most recent infrastructure is going to be more or less a 10-year transactional process where they're designed to encourage the development of particular products and supplies and services related to infrastructure. And when we say infrastructure, we think big. Okay, so not only are we looking at that bridge to be built or that dock to be expanded, but it's also the fencing that goes into that, the cones that go into that, the on-site potential going through and fencing and providing food and housing. So it's everywhere. Every government related business part is impacted by this amount of spending. The largest infrastructure spending especially in transportation in our time, and that's going to be spelled out over a number of years. And then we once again see that just normal $4 trillion budgets that governments operate with at the federal level, and then the $2 trillion plus at the state and local government level. So it's a big marketplace. And I always like to point out before we move into some other additional things that when the government at the federal level appropriates, it oftentimes is not let at the federal level. So when you're looking around in SAM for that port expansion in Brunswick or in Savannah, it's not there because it's going through the Georgia Ports Authority, which is a state agency, or even through an economic development agency in Savannah. So some of us will miss that, not realizing that contract's already going through the process. You're just looking in the wrong location. That is 100,000 different locations plus in the United States where you can find active calls for bids and proposals. And what we do at GovDirections is not really serve as a software as a service to governments, but as an aggregator on behalf of our clients. And we're pulling that data from all different locations, including third-party providers who are out there who will work directly with the government. We don't work with governments at GovDirections, so we serve more as a private resource. So if they want to reach our 105,000 membership, then they can publish and we'll distribute that for them, but we don't sit and wait for them to do that. We aggressively collect that. And so we're looking for these RFPs on your behalf constantly. And so when you see one, the first thing we do, we want to link to that within GovDirections, and you're going to start picking up on that. You're going to have that title. You're going to have I'm going to show you a couple in just a minute, but you're going to have that sort of, here's who the government is and who to contact, but then they're going to quickly step into the parts of the RFP. And the good news is everyone who writes RFPs is trained by the same sort of individual. In fact, I teach a class at a graduate level, and I train individuals on how to write RFPs in the public sector. And the first thing we always preach are the ABCs of technical writing, and that is accuracy, making sure everything's accurate, and even your responses back, making sure that's the case. Brevity, always be brief to the point. Don't use a lot of words. Not necessary. In fact, I'm a man of a few words. I pull as many words out of a sentence as you can, and it'll make it a better sentence. Clarity. Always be clear on your purpose. Understand what you're trying to achieve, and you'll be more successful at that. And so, when the first thing you look at is that statement of work. That's always something I like to right away, making sure that they've met that. And if it's rambling, frankly, that might be one you want to steer away from. Okay, because the government may not really understand what they're looking for. There could be a lot of additional cost involved with it for your end, and so clarity of purpose is very important. And so that statement of work will do that. Technical specifications. Here is a part of a document where they're telling you generally what they're looking for from a technical side. They know they want to, this particular level of response, or this make sure you at least do this particular service or provide this particular supply or so on, but have those laid out. And then they're always going to have a schedule. The schedule is going to speak to the timing. And so those three parts there, along with the rest, is going to start helping you frame your pricing as well. And working with the government is a lot different than working strictly private to private. Okay, governments don't want you to lose money, believe it or not. They don't always want to go with a low bid. They want a competitive basis, but they also want you to be successful. Because one of the things that whenever someone's evaluating an RFP, the first thing they really want to make sure of is that as a procurement official, they're not embarrassed. They don't hire the wrong person. They don't hire somebody who can't deliver. So they're going to want to know what that list of deliverables is going to be, what timing and that schedule. And that's important to them, because the last thing they want to do after they go to the city council or the county commission or to the board to recommend hiring you as a company is to go back to them and say, gosh, I made a mistake. They don't want to do that. Okay. So they're going to spell out exactly what they want. So it's better for them, sometimes better for them to pay a little bit more to be successful in the end than to go with a lower cost and then have a risk of failure. Okay, so always remember that. Contract terms and conditions is generally a part of an RFP. Sometimes this one here I see left out. I don't know why. Governments typically insist on a contract, so they will usually. It's almost always necessary to have that in there. If it's not in there, whenever you respond back, you want to throw in your wrong, because contract terms and conditions are very important in pricing and understanding what you and locking in what they expect of you. The format of the proposal, they're going to tell you how they want you to respond back to them. So that way, whenever looking at company A, company B, company C, and they evaluate you all together, that they can have a common evaluation method, and then know sort of a true apple-to-apple comparison or best as possible. And then they're going to ask for your qualifications and experience and explain what they're looking for. And it's important at this point to put your best face on, okay? And we talk about that in RFP writing course, but here they have that ready to go. The importance of your capability statement can't be shared enough. Having that already laid out before you respond to an RFP is always helpful, not required, but it's helpful because you've already went through that process of thinking who you are, what do you have to offer, what kind of experience you have, and it's already there laid out. And you're going to want to take the responses to each of these and have those put into maybe a Google Drive of some sort. And Tammy Bailey Foltz, who does our training on how to actually write and respond, it shares that with you. She does once again an excellent job. But start collecting those, because you're going to see the same parts of any RFP. And then you're going to have the cost breakdown. And typically they're going to tell you how they want that. Oftentimes they're going to say, we don't want to see that until the second part of the response. Or if we do this, we want you to tell us what your travel is, what this is, and what that is, so that when we compare you across the plate, we're looking at, once again, apple to apple. And so it's important that you have that past performance process booked for you, so you know where you need to be at in your pricing. I'm going to show you some of those in just a minute. And then your evaluation criteria. I know when I teach, the first question I get every single semester is, what is my grading rubric? I'm like, that's the last question you should ask me. You should come in expecting to make an A. Okay. Just like here, they want you should go in there expecting to win. And so they're actually going to give you that evaluation criteria. Here are your 4 items we're going to look at, the 5 items. Here's your breakdown of the points. Here's where we're going to put we're going to weight it, and we're going to, and here's where you need to pay most importance to. Oftentimes, I'll say 75% of it is almost always on very subjective type of grading, and pricing is on generally the lowest part. Okay, so, but you'll know that. And I'll always tell my members or anybody I'm working with, when you write an RFP, go ahead and when you get ready to go send it off, get that evaluation criteria out, put it in front of you, maybe ask a couple of folks over for a good beer or something and say, here, I want you to evaluate my RFP based on this evaluation criteria you have. And whatever those 3 or 4 people do, most likely that's the same scoring system you're going to get from that government itself. No, there is no school of evaluation criteria. Okay, so it really is, just as subjective with 3 or 4 of your good friends or coworkers as you would be within a government themselves. Now you're going to have a particular individual looking. I mean, if you're dealing with a police officers on a particular thing, then they want to look specifically for police related activities. So it is always helpful to know who's going to be evaluating you. And I'm going to share that some comments I've seen in the past too. But these are your typical parts. You may see occasionally, I think the one I may have left off here, or the actual document you got to fill out to go along with it. You have to sometimes say you're not a communist, that that you've checked out E-Verify. These are the things that are going to be common in your state. I sort of call it the flavor of bidding or responding in any individual state. And those state legislators, we send them down there for a few months every year, and they look for something to do, and they pass these things on these mandates on local governments. And so you'll see these routinely. Just, keep them in, once again, in a Google folder. What you see in Georgia, you'll see in Georgia. What you see in New York, you'll see in every New York bid. In California, you'll see in every California bid, and just have them ready to go. But also remember, though, and I think we point this out when we're doing the writing the RFP, some of these, for example, getting an affidavit, you got to have those for every single RFP. So you can't wait to the last minute. Go ahead and get that up front when you're going to have to have it, because you're going to have to get that notary and so forth. So, but here we are with the parts. And another favorite quote of mine is, "You're the one that I wanted to find." Okay, that's a Coldplay song, and that's what we're always doing in life, is just seeking until we find it. Okay, and that's what that's why it's important when you read these, that you learn how to read an RFP, so that you're going through and you're pinpointing the right one. Okay, so it's the one that you wanted to find. And you're not out there bidding on things. It just doesn't really make any difference responding to ones that you're never going to have any chance of winning. Occasionally you want to test the market, you want to float that, but go ahead and start setting out some analytics that say that define who you are. And for example, I respond to a lot of compensation classification plans. I have in the past. I've worked in about 34 states and have won about 300 contracts in mid-sized contracts in cities and counties in the United States. Thoroughly enjoyed that work. I really don't do it that much anymore. Last one was for COVID, but each of those, I started looking at particular demographics, for example, or some sort of indicator of success is what I call it. For example, I know that if the population is between 3,000 and 15,000 in a government, I generally do pretty well with that. And they have maybe between 50 employees to maybe 300, 400 employees. Once again, I do pretty well with that. Now, if they get up to 1,000, I don't win those. They're not likely to work for me, probably because I'm not so successful with that level. It's a bigger, more complex project requiring a lot more resources that I'm not really prepared to engage with. Okay? Earlier on in my career, I might have thought I wanted to do that, but I decided I didn't want to. And so I stayed focused. And what you'll learn is that the more of those that meet those criteria, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different types of criteria that you respond to, that meet them all, you will have a high level, you're not frustrated, and you'll win more of them because you'll learn how to find the one that you want to, okay? And that's the one you want to respond to. So here's an example of one. Right before COVID came in that fall, Carter County, Tennessee, close to Georgia. I don't really do a lot of work in Tennessee, but I have in the past had a request for a salary survey and compensation analysis. And it really met my in my profile. I'm gonna jump over here so I can show it to you. I've actually found it. That's what we do for a living here at Gov Directions. We go out and seek and find for you. But when we found this one, it wasn't even released yet. It was one of our upcoming, which means that we go in and we pull projects that are being discussed at a city council level, or maybe going through the budget process. And so we saw this one before going in a couple of months, I think it was 2 months before they actually requested it, going before the board and the county to tell them that they were wanting to do this, and they were getting permission for it. And so we went in and pulled it. And then that's why you see the date, month and date written in there, because the earlier the lead time, and look for our business intelligence product to get that, the better you are. Okay, so you're learning these early on. In fact, I was able to go in there and see where the budget was at on this one, everything, before we actually responded to it. But when I pulled this one out, and you can start seeing how I started writing some handwritten notes on it, but they have 256 employees. It was really right in my wheelhouse. And it was a county, good size. In fact, and if I start looking through here, I can see that, in this one here was working with the director of finance. They're the people who are going to evaluate me, have a financial background in financial management. And that's what my profession has started out with. So I knew I was going to be able to interact with these individuals. So a couple of indicators: population, individual employees, the level, the type of government it is, the individuals that I'm actually going to be responding to or pitching. And not only that, but the time frame too. These are indicators that pulled together right away, said, yes, I would like to have this. I'm going to have a very high chance of winning this. I'm not going to waste my time. Okay, so I'm stepping through this, and you can see this is a more informal type. It's RFP. Some of them are a lot more formal than others, and very structured. And you don't even see, the reason why you don't really see a cover page on this one is because we did pull it from the minutes of that meeting early on. But they come through there, and I start looking at particular items of the RFP, including how many copies of the proposal they want. So the reason why that's important is I know there's going to be 10 people evaluating. So I got a group of 10. And that's a good group. You usually win. If you only have 2, then you got to win 1. Got to win 50% of them. So you generally can convince them if you learn a little about them. I already know that 2 of them are going to be finance related. So that's going to be very good for me. And I'm going to learn other things like what kind of delivery methods they want. This has become more important during the period of COVID as governments have stepped away from direct interaction. So it's been more online, using email, secure drop loaders. And in fact, there's some good third-party software as a service systems that are there. And it's important to recognize that. I'll just stop there. There's about 30 of these, maybe 40 of these companies in the country now working with government. And they may work with a total of maybe 12 to 1,400 governments nationwide who would use a system like that. Sometimes they'll suggest you have to register and pay them, but you don't. Okay, there's always a free level of services. Governments use that as a platform for distribution. It is a system that's sort of waning. It's more for governments. It's becoming an enterprise-related software where they are using it to distribute information internally, but making sure it's freely available to contractors to respond. If you come across a site that's requiring you to pay or something to gain access to that government document, which is a government document, I encourage you to call that mayor or that county commission chairman and say, wait a minute, fellas, this is not the way to be doing government business, and encouraging to open that up, and realizing that that's difficult sometimes, but you can always get it freely through those systems if you stumble around. If you ever see one you need a little help with, give us a call. We'll show you how to do that. In the introduction here, that will tell you a little bit about that government and what they're trying to accomplish. And this one here is very straight to the point. I know what it means. They expect me to know what it means, and they want to do in this particular case, a classification study, and I know that's what I do. And this is where they actually started talking about statistics and numbers and some background data. And that's helpful for pricing. Is pretty much standard in this business, and your business is going to be also be standard. So if you're doing carpet installation, or if you're doing flooring, or you're doing pest control, and it could be another unit method. So it's going to be square footage, or other types of methods that they might use, but it's going to be something common to your industry. by unit or so forth. And so you want to start collecting that data and who's winning. And we actually do some of those reports. I'll show you in a second. But the details here, they give me a scope of services. And here we got, six particular services they were looking for. I'm going to read through this entire document when I first start through and go through it to make sure I can fulfill something. If I can't do something, in this case here, there's a note about somebody else who could help me. This is where we're looking at teaming. Okay, teaming is very important. Danielle Miller is a teaming expert, and we have her on our website giving some instructions on how to do that, how to work with others. But it's important you start building that network, and you'll find it brings more success. So you never leave something blank. If you can't do something, and you can't bring somebody to the table who can do it, then you need to acknowledge that you can't do it. Okay, so when you're dealing with government, it's important that you follow their instructions to a T and never leave anything open for misunderstanding. Often the art of working with government is not understanding what they're doing, but on the other hand, not misunderstanding. Okay, and so it's important that they follow both those rules. Okay. Deliverables, here you'll see, and in this case here, they gave me the 11 different deliverables. This is where this is going to talk to me about my pricing. I'm going to look for things like meetings. I'm going to look for all the details that could potentially cost me, and I'm going to make sure I include that in my pricing approach. Okay, if I have any questions, I might write down those questions. I'm generally at the school, thanks to Tammy, she's kind of helped me get to this point. I don't really ask many questions. I wait till somebody else to ask, and she's advised us of that. And she does, once again, I'll show you that session in just a minute. That'll be next Thursday at 4:00. Insurance requirements. If there's other kind of specific requirements that you might need, they're going to list those. Okay, going on through here, the proposal format. They're going to tell me how they want to lay it out. And in the particular sections, I'm going to make sure my sections that I put together covers these 9 particular items. Okay, cost is the last thing. Sometimes they want that separate in a closed envelope, but they're going to tell me how they want to compare it. In addition, I'm also going to have remembered, up there the scope of work and what they're looking, the deliverables, because I'm going to use that language. Sometimes I'll use it verbatim, and my response back to them, this is what they want. If I can do it, I'm just going to tell them I can do it. So that's important that you understand that. Okay, and using that common language, and once again, that's on the more the writing part of it. But read through it thoroughly. Don't start writing anything until after you've read through everything, you understand what you're looking for. And this is where, that sort of talked about that sort of flavor in the community, no conflict of interest, if there's a license they require, if they require you to, other types of procurement or cancellations. Sometimes they will lift an RFP from another community that's very similar, and then they'll change the wording. So they'll say, oh, licensure, well, we don't require a license. Why do they have it in there if it's not required? You know what I'm saying? So, but it might be in there because they lifted it from another location. So frequent borrowing, and oftentimes you'll see the same thing over and over again. The request. That's why it's good to go ahead and pull that Google Drive together and make sure it's okay. In fact, I have actually seen contracts where it's one county making a request and actually accidentally leave the name of the other county and the RFP. They just should use the same document. Now, whenever you're responding back, don't ever do that. Okay, make sure you got the right county and you got the right city, because that's sort of a no. Okay, and other steps here, and that's pretty much it. Okay, this is an RFP. Some of them can be a little bit more complex. I think we've seen 1,000-page one. Those oftentimes are just a lot of specs. Okay, the core, here's one straight to the point. It's a 7-page RFP. It's not overwhelming. Most of them are not. So when you do pick it up, don't respond to it at first, read it through, and then sit down. I always think about it for a couple of days, maybe if I got time, and then start thinking about who I want to include on it. And then I would sit down and start writing it. Oftentimes I go ahead and write it all together at one point in time, then set it aside, and then come back and edit it. But then never send it off too soon. Set it there in time to reach back to that individual government. So that was one. And I'll just point out that the old Parkinson's law that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. If you got 2 days to get it done, you're going to take 2 days to get it done. You got 2 weeks, you're going to take 2 weeks. If you got 2 months, believe me, you'll take 2 months to get it done. Okay, so don't let timing influence you too much. Okay, just be prepared. The first part before you even start bidding is get prepared. Get the capability statement in place. Get the frame of your company. Be ready to go. And then when you start seeing, you're able to respond and get a system down that allows you to respond quickly and timely. Okay. Here, once again, I've said these as I went along, but make sure you read the entire proposal. Pay attention to the areas that we talked about today. It's always set it aside first and think about it before you sit down and talk to colleagues. Make sure it's the fit. Make sure it's the one you wanted to find. Don't waste your time. Okay. And then complete that proposal as a whole. And I would just share with you another one. I think maybe this is one of the last quotes, but Albert Einstein, who said, only source of knowledge is experience. And so get the practice, go up there and go ahead and start fulfilling. You may even want to just practice on one before you send it off. Okay. And then wait and see who wins that one. And then go ahead. I would say just go ahead and fire away. If you're ready to go, don't wait. Okay. You don't have to wait for registrations. You don't have to wait for your DUNS number, or that's a federal requirement only. Don't confuse the level of governments. Local governments right now, if you're in business, you're ready to do business with them. Okay, and so that's important. That's the difference. But here, here's a sample of response back I got. We did for this one. In fact, when we spoke to them specifically, let me pull it over here so you can see it. But so have a general letter ready to go. Frame. Always do a letter in the very same way. ABCs. Accuracy, brevity, clarity. Be purposely driven in your first paragraph. Repeat what they're actually looking for, how you have met that in the second. Affirm who you are as a company in your third, and then scope it in the fourth and fifth, and the final, and close it. Always be closing. That's the other ABC. But you're ready to go. You're ready to meet with them. Make sure you got good contact information and so forth. And then on your actual response back. Here you have your cover letter ready to go, and Tammy will help structure that with you in our training sessions. But it should be straightforward, having all your response back to them, and your references all there for you and ready to go and in place. And this particular session is not an RFP writing class, how to read one. But when you read it through, always have your responses ready. And I showed you this one only because sometimes you click and paste and you're ready to go, and there I am right now. And so you're just moving them around. And so when you look at that RFP, you'll look at the section that in that format of proposal, and then you're going back to your response, and then you're moving that to fit that government's format. Okay, so it's important that you do that. And so, the next RFP writing class I mentioned is the first and third Thursday at 4 p.m. You could go and register online if you have an interest in that at GovSchool. And so those classes there, and the schedule is there. With that, I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions in this group, and then we'll move forward. My purpose today was to identify the structure of an RFP. We walked through each section, we explained its importance, and then we actually use an actual RFP as an example to identify each section. And I would share with you that I did not win this RFP. I came in second, and I should have won it. I actually had the highest points. And I actually do a session called GovSchool Focus. It's in our library, and there's actually one recorded in the library. Kind of explains why I didn't. And it was through no fault of my own. And so that's important. Here's the GovSchool Focus class where we actually talk about that. And I use this one as the example because I did win it. And I did everything right. And so sometimes you can do every single thing right when you're trying to work with government, and it just doesn't fall out. That the stars don't align. So it's not that you have to always change. Okay, know your indicators of success. Have a high degree of success, but don't always change what you're doing. Be clear, be confident, and you will have success. Any comments? Any questions? So I'm always glad that you join us today. And if you do have any questions at GovDirections, you can come to our website. You can give us a call at 800-492-8523. If you need a personal discussion, you can click here, and I will be glad to chat with any of you. Just go on here and I'll walk through a personal demonstration. I'm going to give directions, answer just general questions for you. It's 20 minutes, there's no charge for it. And you can choose any of the times that we have available here, and I'll be glad to help you with that. But thank you for coming today, and we look forward to serving you. If you ever have any questions, reach out. Have a good day.